you? I hope you're doing well. If you don't know me, my name is Haya and I'm a medical student at the University of Central Lancashire. Today I thought I'd share with you guys the resources that I used as a first-year medical student, and they were really helpful in terms of understanding the bigger picture and also for examinations. I think as a first-year medical student, most of the information will be provided in your lecture notes. However, I am a sucker for books and I like to read books and I like to know a bit more than what's required, and I feel like it helps you really make the knowledge stick in your head. And so I thought I'd compile a list of resources I used for every subject, and hopefully it'll help you as much as it helped me. To be honest, not all the subjects have resources, and it's basically because I used to study based on the weight of the subject. So for example, anatomy had a really big weighting, and that's why I used to use a lot of resources for it. But other subjects, we would have just 2 or 3 lectures a year, and so I wouldn't really need to use a resource. I would just, for example, use Google to fill up any gaps in my knowledge. Okay, so the first subject I'm going to talk about is anatomy, and I think a lot of people are always scared of anatomy, and they're scared how to study anatomy and how to approach it. My first resource for anatomy is a website called Teach Me Anatomy. So that website is the holy grail. It is one of the best websites I've ever used. I love it so much. It is for free. I think you can become a pro member or something like that. It is one of the best websites. Basically what it does is it gives you a very good overview of each part of the body. It separates it into bones, muscles, innervations, vessels, and it has a clinical box at the end. It's arranged in such a nice way that makes it very comprehensive and very easy to understand. And the pictures that they use are really easy in terms of separating the muscles. So Teach Me Anatomy is the first resource I use. Before I look at my lecture notes, before I go to any book, I go to Teach Me Anatomy just to get a great overview of everything, and it makes my life so much easier. The second resource that I want to share with you guys is this. So it's the Nectars Anatomy flashcards. I actually learned about this resource from a video from TheTrendMedic, and it's actually really helpful, but I think this is nice as a revision method. So basically what you do is it has all the numbers on one side and then all the answers on the back side, and it also has a clinical box. I don't know if you guys can see, and it also has this thing which makes it easy to separate the sections. So for example, if I'm currently doing upper limb, I would just take the upper limb and use it. I basically used to use this when I would go on placement and I would want to do something productive on the way there. It would be easy to test friends and ask them questions, but it is a bit detailed. So sometimes in anatomy, for my course at least, you don't have to know every single detail. So what I would do is I would just circle with my pencil what muscles are relevant for me, and it would make my life much easier. The third resource is a book. It's called Grey's Anatomy for Students. And I think the difference between Grey's Anatomy for Students versus Grey's Anatomy is Grey's Anatomy for Students is much more concise, and it's arranged in a way which is easier to grasp. I think Grey's Anatomy, the actual book, it's more suitable for professional doctors and surgeons and people who are into the anatomical field, if that is a thing. But yeah, Grey's Anatomy for Students I think is really helpful because it organizes each topic into regional, and it also has clinical cases at the end, and the diagrams are very comprehensive and very easy to use. So for anatomy personally, I prefer to use diagrams rather than photos. I tend to use photos at the end just as a method of looking out of interest rather than studying. So yeah, Grey's Anatomy is really helpful. And finally, one of the resources that I like to use as well for anatomy is this one. So this is called Moore's Essential Clinical Anatomy, and this and Grey's Anatomy are the two books that I switch between. The only reason why I would prefer to use this book over Grey's Anatomy is I just like the way it's written. I find that the way it's written here is less complicated, and it's also divided in a very nice way. and it has like a clinical box as well where it talks about the clinical scenarios that might happen in that anatomical body, and it comes with case studies. So once you get the book, it gives you online access to case studies based on every single chapter, and I find that very helpful, and it makes me interested in learning the subject. So yeah, and the reason why I have this book physically is because I like to highlight sometimes when I'm studying anatomy, so I can actually highlight while I'm studying. But yeah, it's usually I jump between Grey's Anatomy for Students and Moore's Essential Clinical Anatomy. The next subject, which I think is also difficult among a lot of medical students, is pharmacology. So pharmacology is a subject where you don't only need to know the names of drugs, which is a misconception I think I had, but you also need to know the mechanisms of actions and the side effects and how different drugs interact. And so for me, the lecture slides were not enough. I felt like I needed to know more, and it took me quite some time to find a suitable book, because for me to stick to a book, I need to actually like the way it's written, I need to like the layout, I need to like the diagrams. I actually look very thoroughly into a book before I start to read it, and I invest in it. And after a lot of research, I really mean a lot, I decided to go for this book. So it's the Medical Pharmacology and Therapeutics. It's the 5th edition. It's by Waller and Sampson. And the reason why I like this book is, I think like many pharmacology books, it's divided in a way that's easy to understand. So for example, I'm gonna go to the... So each chapter is separated based on what system it's affecting. So for example, I went to the systematic hypertension, so anything for high blood pressure. So it starts with an explanation of the whole circulatory system. So it's a good physiology book as well. And then it talks about each drug. So for example, beta blockers. So it talks about beta blockers, and then it gives you examples. So the actual names of the drugs, like atenolol and bisoprolol and nebivolol. And just a fun fact, all beta blockers end in lol. So that's something nice to know. And then it gives you the sites of action and mechanism of action. Sometimes it also talks about the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. So I really like the way it's written. It also has some diagrams. So for me, this book was really, really helpful. Nonetheless, it has also some questions at the end of each chapter, which I think are helpful just for you to make sure that you know everything and you revise everything. So yeah, I really, really like this book. It gives you like true or false questions. It gives you like best case scenario questions, and it gives you case questions. So for me, I really enjoyed this book, and I enjoy reading it. I like the way it's written. I think it's a really, really good book. So I think also it's a good book not only for medical students but also for pharmacology students. But yeah, it is a medical pharmacology book. And another resource I think you need for pharmacology is the BNF, and that's the British, one sec, let me check what it is.
One semester later.
Yeah, the British National Formulary. So the second book I think you guys should need for pharmacology is the BNF, which is the British National Formulary. It's just a book which has all the drugs and the dosage of the drugs and the side effects of the drugs and what they're used for. It's used in the UK, so if you're a British medical student, I think that would be really helpful. But basically what it does is it's a reference book. So it is useful, but not, I feel like it's useful as a way to check the drugs themselves rather than study from the book. And you need to know how to use the book, especially the online version, when you're doing your prescription test, which is usually towards the end of your medical degree. A third subject is physiology. Now, personally, physiology is one of my strong subjects. I don't find a lot of difficulty in physiology. But a good book that I think might be useful is Physiology at a Glance, and that's by Ward. I don't have the physical copy, but I use the online copy on Clinical Key. And the reason why I like this book is, as the name says, it gives you a glance of every system. So I think it's a good book for pre-reading, and it's good for after you take your lecture, you can take parts of the lecture notes and add them to the information of the book, and then you have your notes. So it's really, really nice to give you a good overview of everything. It also has some questions, which is useful, and it has really good diagrams. So if you're a person that studies from diagrams, I think it's perfect just to summarize everything. The fourth subject I want to talk about is embryology. Some universities call it developmental biology. I think is a very new subject for most medical students, so it's not something that you take in school, so it's pretty new because, for example, physiology, you've probably taken it in A levels, anatomy, it's a bit easier to grasp, but embryology is very, very new, and embryology goes alongside anatomy, so you need to have a good grasp of both to be able to understand because they complement each other. And I think it is one of the difficult subjects that you take in med school. And one of the books that really helped me was Embryology at a Glance, so it's also by Ward. So it's similar to the Physiology at a Glance. It's really helpful to give you a good overview. So in a way, it's just like you're setting the mood, you're setting your brain to know everything that there needs to, like everything that you need to know for embryology. And then you can add to it your lecture notes. So I think it is really helpful for revision and for pre-reading. Another resource that I loved for embryology, and this guy saved my life, like before my exams I watched all his videos. He explains in such a great way. He is really, really amazing. It's Dr. Minas, so I'm gonna link his channel down below. Dr. Minas explains embryology in an amazing way. His diagrams are so clear, so concise, and he's a really, really good person, and he explains in such a good way. So if you guys don't know his channel, definitely go check him out. Finally, the last subject I want to talk about is microbiology. I know a lot of people find this subject pretty difficult, but personally it's one of my favorite subjects, and I think it's because of the book that I use. So the book that I use is called MIMS, Medical Microbiology and Immunology, and the reason why I love this book is the way it arranges everything. So once again, it goes back to system by system. So let's say it will arrange all the respiratory diseases in one chapter, and then it will organize the diseases based on the pathogens. So it'll have bacteria, viruses, fungi, protists, all in different sections, and then it will talk about the disease they cause, the side effects, and everything like that. So I think it's really, really interesting. And it also has an immunology section. Personally, I don't use that immunology section, but I think that if I had any gaps in immunology, I would definitely use the book because the way it's organized is really nice. It has nice pictures. So yeah, I think this is all. I hope you guys found this video very useful, and if you guys have any other resources for anatomy, pharmacology, physiology, embryology, and microbiology, please comment them down below. And if you'd like to see another video where I review the books in more detail, or I talk about a certain subject and how I study for that subject, please also comment down below. Don't forget to follow me on my Instagram, TheTrendMedic, and I hope I see you guys in another video. Good luck, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!